this week's edition of Beyond Wall Street, the show that helps take the mystery out of Wall Street and helps it make sense for you on your street. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and joining me in the studio, we have two members from Kenneth Porter and Company based right here in Hampton Roads. Kenny Porter, who is the president and founder, and Wesley Gomez, who is the chief investment officer. Wesley and Kenny, it's great to be with you this week. How are you both doing?
Doing
Great.
good.
Good. Well, I know we have the best time getting to serve the Hampton Roads community. You always put together fabulous shows in order to help educate and provide you with the best financial information possible. And if you were born between the years of 1946 and 1980, in particular, you are not going to want to miss today's show. We are going to be peeling back the curtain on something that is happening in our world right now, known as the Great Wealth Transfer. Yeah. What is it, and why is it so important and critical to understand what's going on? So that's what we're going to start off our discussion today. So let's just start off by defining what this Great Wealth Transfer is. Can you share a little bit more about what we're talking about?
Yeah, so Kristen, really the wealth transfer has to do with, there's about $84 trillion in the market between those ages that you talked about from 1946 to 1980. There's a shift coming, and that shift has to do with that transfer between those boomers to their children, who are the millennials and the Gen Xers. And we're going to see a significant wealth transfer, not only for those family members, but for the federal government.
Yes.
And so we want to try to mitigate and minimize that risk of income tax to those family members who are going to be inheriting significant wealth and significant assets from their baby boomer family members.
And I feel like we just need to stop and put an exclamation point around this amount. $84 trillion is set to pass. Yes, trillion with a T is set to pass from the baby boomer generation on down. And this is going to have not only effects for the baby boomers who are planning and wanting to leave a legacy and leave that money behind, but for the Gen Xers and millennials who are going to be inheriting this money. Predominantly, a lot of it is in tax-deferred accounts. That creates a whole nother conversation that we're going to need to get into. So much good stuff to talk about. But who is this really going to affect the most, in your opinion, Wesley?
Who's it going to affect the most? Well, I really think it's going to affect the people receiving the dollars. And the big reason is that I'm sure they already have assets now. So when they get those assets, more than likely, they may have duplicate, triplicate positions, right? So that's increasing that concentration risk, so to say, of the different assets. But also you want to look at the accounts that are coming over, right? Are they taxable, tax deferred, tax free? And how does that align with their current assets? Again, you're commingling two households, and how does that look overall to hit your specific goals?
Right, because that could easily bump someone up into a higher tax bracket, inheriting that much wealth, right?
Well, you know, I can give you a personal example of this. You know, with my grandmother that we had talked about in a previous couple of episodes ago, she inherited wealth from her spouse, right? And so there was no taxable event there in the IRAs. But then when my grandmother passed, her 4 children inherited this IRA. And they inherited this IRA that created a tax explosion on their income. Because we fall under this rule now where that inheritance has to be taxed over a 10-year span. Yes,
because it used to be you received an inherited IRA and you could take out that money over your lifetime as the person who inherited it. The Secure 2.0 Act has changed that and said, nope, if you inherit that, you have to take out that money over a 10-year period.
Yeah, Kristen, if you think about it, the federal government has a bullseye on qualified plans. And these qualified plans, arguably, there's about $27 trillion in the market right now designated as IRAs, 401ks, SARS-EP simples.
Right, so qualified plans are those tax-deferred plans. There's so many different names to describe what we're talking about, but yes, meaning that
trying to capture everyone.
Right.
So if you've got one of those type plans and you're aging, there's a high probability that your family members are going to inherit those accounts and inherit a tax consequence with that. That's likely going to be higher than their marginal rates, meaning this thing called effective rates.
Right.
That you can actually have a higher effective tax rate than what the marginal rate suggests. And we don't want that to happen to our clients. So we want to be proactive in working through what we call tax mapping to reduce and minimize those tax consequences. And then also look at strategies like, no one really likes to talk about life insurance, but life insurance is one of the greatest assets in a wealth transfer strategy where we can minimize the risk of taxation by maximizing the benefit that a family member would inherit now tax-free through the use of properly structured and funded permanent life insurance, as an example.
So I'm curious, when you were sharing that, are you referring to something known as a 7702 plan?
That's right. A lot of
Okay.
folks have heard 7702 is a section out of the Internal Revenue Code. And that section is defining how life insurance and those type products work to be able to create a social benefit. You see, if there's a tax transfer and the federal government wins in that, well, there's got to be a loser. And the loser's the consumer, because it means there's less dollars being now fed back into the public's hands to be able to consume, whether it be everything from healthcare to luxury items. And the less wealth that you transfer, the less wealth that we have that goes back into growing our economy. And we know right now our economy needs all the help it can get.
Well, what's interesting about the reason my ears perked up when you were talking about this with 7702 plans is I think a lot of folks have never even heard of this before. But I heard a stat recently where apparently 85% of Congress members have a 7702 plan. 90% of senators have a 7702 plan. Our last 5 presidents have had one. So what is it that they know that the rest of the country doesn't know, right? I mean, this could be a really important strategy to be employing.
Chris, and I would add to that if you go look on the FDIC website, fdic.gov, and you go look into the financials of banks, one of the largest assets is that key or executive plan or executive benefits, which includes those 7702 plans, which is properly structured and funded permanent life insurance strategies. Now, life insurance in and of itself is not a silver bullet, but if you structure it appropriately with the rest of your assets and great wealth management, like in our wealth management team that Wes runs, you have the opportunity to maximize those benefits and minimize those costs, such as income tax, inflation, planned obsolescence,
all those risks that
technological
you
change.
spend all of your time focusing on, right, Wesley?
And again, it's about controlling what you can.
Exactly, right, because there's so many things that we can't control.
That's right.
But yeah, well, and it's interesting because I think some people think, well, I don't need life insurance. I'm retired, right? You know, and typically a lot of people have life insurance while they're working, but clearly people are getting it not so much for the life insurance aspect, but for the tax-free component that can come with passing on that wealth.
And one of the ways we can help a client see that is we offer them what's called a tax map. And today, we're going to offer to you a free or complimentary tax map that will allow you to see position A versus position B. And it gives you the opportunity to weigh one strategy against another before you actually implement. So you don't have to fire the bullet before you know. You're able to see this target ahead of you and know which way is going to be the most efficient way for you to maximize your wealth and the transfer of that wealth to future generations.
Well, goodness, we've only barely scratched the surface. I'm excited to dive into this more deeply with you, Kenny. Wesley, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, if you would like to take advantage of this opportunity and receive your very own complimentary tax map from Kenny and Wesley and the team of Kenneth Porter & Company, it's really simple. All you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen, 844-575-8071. You're also welcome to take out your smartphone and you can open up that camera app. Just point, click, and scan that QR code down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team will reach out to connect with you to schedule your time to come in and receive your complimentary tax map that way as well. More on this important discussion of the Great Wealth Transfer right after this.
Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, Ben. Hey, birthday party for Carol and 5. Happy birthday to you.
happy Monday.
Daryl's birthday, be there every square. Happy birthday to you. As you can see from our quarterly report on slide number 62, we're trending in the right direction. All signs point to a very positive outlook for the next several years. If you peel back the onion...
Ben, do you have anything to add?
The work never seems to end until the day it finally does. Call today to get your free written financial plan so you may live every day to the fullest and enjoy the retirement of your dreams.
Welcome back to Beyond Wall Street. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Kenny Porter and Wesley Gomez from Kenneth Porter and Company, based right here in Hampton Roads. And we are talking today all about the great wealth transfer. So what is going on? It's the fact that $84 trillion is expected to pass from the baby boomer generation on down. And we need to plan for this, whether you're on the side of preparing to pass on that wealth or the side of receiving that wealth. There's really important considerations that need to be taken into place. But I think it's important to note that one of the things that sets you all apart is that you engage in the comprehensive, holistic financial planning process for your clients, which means you help folks navigate legacy planning, estate planning, which isn't always the most fun thing to think about, but obviously it's a really critical piece. And Wesley, I know we had you on the show a few weeks ago. You got to share a little more about your story, but if you don't mind just sharing again why this is something that you're so passionate about helping folks engage in.
Yeah, it's about understanding, what the goal of the assets are, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody may want to leave it to charity, to family, things of that nature, but what is the final goal of those assets? Mm-hmm. And let's say it's family. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure they get the most out of those dollars and keep the least amount away from Uncle Sam, because just the way the laws are written, they're not going to get that full benefit.
Right.
And I think that's where that tax mapping that we've always talked about comes into play.
And I know from your own story, you kind of were motivated to get into this business because of a legacy or a lack of legacy planning that went on, right?
Exactly. I was experienced on the other end where the family did not have that plan or have that roadmap, because when my grandfather passed, my dad actually had to go find all the statements, talk to the investment companies, talk to the insurance companies, when he should have spent that time celebrating my grandfather's life. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so if you have those tough conversations now, they're needed, then when that transfer happens, it's a lot easier and a lot smoother, and the family can, be more at ease.
Right, for sure. What do you feel like when folks come in and they need specific help in these areas of what we're talking about and engaging in legacy planning, what's the biggest question or the most common concern that you find folks are asking?
Yeah, what I have found, Kristen, is that I think when we're going through this interview process, what we call the discovery interview, is that most people want to know, well, what will I have to pay if I don't make this decision to transfer wealth in an efficient manner? So what is the cost for me to do nothing? And so what we have to lay out is, one, here's position A being you change nothing in your current plan, your current strategy. You don't do any estate planning. And estate planning meaning, do you have a revocable living trust in place? Or do you just have a simple I love you will? And so understanding those things and those questions that we ask our clients to really narrow in on what it is they want, not only for their distribution phase, but in that wealth transfer to the legacy. How would they like those dollars to be passed on? And most people will say, Kristen, I do not want to have my wealth go to the federal government. I want my wealth to transfer to my children, my grandchildren, my church, my charity. And we help those consumers who are in that position understand the most efficient way to do that by putting a verifiable model together. And that model shows the who, what, when, where, and why their financial positions are set up, and then what that consequence of those positions are going to look like in that distribution to legacy phase. And then they can really see the power of strategic financial planning that takes into consideration income tax, estate tax, the wealth transfer of going from one owner's account to another. And doing that in a holistic way where they can see it on one piece of paper, that's what we love doing in our mapping system, our road mapping, retirement road mapping, our tax mapping. It's setting out this journey in advance. And they're able to go on this journey in theory before it actually happens.
Right. Which, I appreciate that you're sharing this because it is a journey and there's so much that can be done ahead of time in order to prevent unnecessary family drama, for example, or strife when someone passes away. But I think a lot of folks are hesitant to have the conversation. I mean, I think of my own family. I married into a family that was like, you don't talk about grandma's death until grandma's gone because this is disrespectful to her. And I'm going, but there's some planning we got to do here, right? And then you don't want to be the other end of the extreme where that's all you're thinking about. I mean, there's got to be a healthy balance there. But what do you find are some of the biggest obstacles that keep people from actually engaging in this estate planning process?
I think it's just, it's talking about money, right? It's a personal conversation to have.
Yeah.
But
it's vulnerable, right?
Exactly. But if you can have that conversation and be open and honest, it's actually going to save you a lot of headache and pain in the future.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do here. Again, we want to control what we can, but again, we want to create that roadmap so when that event does happen, everything is answered, everything's written down, everything's documented, so then you can grieve at the time you're supposed to, right? Celebrate that life.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think too, because the tax laws have changed, this is something that you can't afford not to have the conversation, because I think a lot of people think, oh, it'll be fine, I'll just leave it to my kids and it'll be great. But then what they don't realize is maybe you are unknowingly leaving a ticking tax time bomb, if you will, that's going to put your kids in a not so great situation. And nothing's sadder than thinking you're doing a nice gift for them and then it's going to the federal government instead of to your family.
That's right. And a way I like to think about it is that your beliefs about your money drives your money behavior. And that money behavior ends up driving your money relationship, how you relate with your children, how you relate with your advisors. And that money relationship then drives the money result.
Right.
And so if you really want to strategize in a way to maximize those benefits, you need to think about your belief system and your money belief system and how that works in those 4 quadrants I just described to you.
Right.
And then that can help us understand how best to recommend to you how to segregate that wealth to the right individual.
Right, and making sure your wishes are carried out, right?
Yes.
It's your money, you want to make sure you know what's going to happen to it. Are you able to work with families? Do you work with multi-generations? Have you had experiences where, maybe it's grandparents who are talking about passing on money, or the kids who are in their 50s maybe are going, hey, I'm about to inherit this, or I have inherited this. Talk about some examples that you've been able to help folks with.
So for me, 27 years of my career, now I'm experiencing kind of that sandwich generation where, specifically one client who just lost her husband. And, she was asking my thoughts on the trust that was in place. And, Kenny, can I make any changes? These are the wishes that my husband had for the family, but now I'm in control. Now I'm the trustee. And I want to do things just a little bit differently. Is that okay? And the answer is it actually is, because he entrusted you with those assets. You're now the benefactor. You now get the liquidity, use, and control to manage that money as you see fit for your future generations, your grandchildren, your children, your church, your charity. And so it's really beautiful to be able to come alongside of our clients who have, in many cases, it's a traumatic event to lose a loved one.
Yeah, for sure.
But to be able to have a plan that's outlined and a plan that sets in place, not necessarily in stone, but in place where you can see that plan play out to the next generation, that's a wonderful feeling. And, we experienced that just recently with a client who lost their husband, and being able to help them put a plan in place for the future generations. It was a great feeling. We love doing it. every day.
Well, and I know what a blessing it is that folks, that you work with know that they can call you, rely on you, and it's a safe place, and it's a place where they're going to be met with compassion to help navigate these challenging things. So if you're out there and you are needing some help as you think about your own estate planning needs, we encourage you to pick up the phone and call this number, 844-575-8071. You will get to receive a complimentary tax map from Kenny and Wesley and the team of Kenneth Porter and Company. But of course, if estate planning is something you're needing help with, and specifically where those two things meet, because tax planning is so integral with your legacy planning, they would love to help you in that way. You're also welcome to scan that QR code, and that will get you connected as well. More on this episode of Beyond Wall Street right after this.
I have the confidence in my team that if clients have questions, they can reach out directly to my team members. If I'm in a scheduled meeting or with a client, they have my associates to be able to fall back on. I have a chief payer planner. His name's Noah Baker. He always gets mad at me when I say he's my right-hand man, but there's no better way to describe Noah. Noah's an integrated part of our planning process and our team. And alongside of Noah's his wife, Amanda, who is our chief accountant within our firm, and she also runs on the side of our bookkeeping and outsourced CFO services. And then I have a couple of children who are working with me. I have 5 children, 2 of which are working with me in the business. My son, who's currently serving in the United States Army, gets out next year and is coming into the financial services industry. It's a family business that is built around our core principles of serving families in Hampton Roads.
Welcome back, Hampton Roads. You're watching Beyond Wall Street. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, here with Kenny Porter and Wesley Gomez from Kenneth Porter and Company. We are talking today about the great wealth transfer, the fact that $84 trillion is expected to pass from the baby boomer generation on down. And of course, this feeds into a bigger conversation about legacy planning, estate planning. And I think there's a misconception out there. A lot of folks think, oh, I don't need to engage in estate planning. That's only for the really wealthy, or that's only for famous people. But I've heard it expressed that if you have things and you love people, you need an estate plan. And if you don't have your own estate plan, guess what? The state has one for you, and it might not necessarily be your wishes being carried out. So we don't want that to happen to folks. We've kind of talked about why people hesitate sometimes to engage in this process. So Wesley, what are the most important steps folks need to take? Let's say that someone's starting from ground zero, from scratch with their estate planning. What steps would you say, okay, here's what you need to do first?
I mean, even personally, it's about having that communication, understanding where you currently are, and making sure that you understand where you want that legacy or your legacy to be. Okay. Once you have those 2 points, think about it. Think about that plan as a GPS. Right? Maybe we're going from a trip from Virginia all the way to California. What stops along the way do you want to have? Do you want to pay for your grandkids' college? Do you want to pay some money to church, right? Donate money to charities. As long as you have a plan from point A to point B, it's going to give you that confidence knowing that your legacy is going to be intact.
And it's important to point out that this is a judgment-free zone. I think everyone's desires are different. I mean, I've met people who say, I want the last check to bounce, right? When I pass away, right? And, I think of my parents who've been so generous, their take was that they didn't want to leave a bunch of money to my brother and I after they passed. They were like, we want to help you now with some things and enjoy those things with you, right? Or there's some people that are saying, no, I've already put my kids through college. I've done everything. There's no right or wrong answer. At the end of the day, it's your money, it's your wishes, but you have to do the planning to have those wishes carried out.
Yeah, and that's where that organization comes into play because, again, you want to make sure that you are controlling the areas that you can control, right? You want to make sure that you control that tax liability, which will let you control how much you can donate to charities, donate to your favorite places. So, again, making sure that you do have that plan that's going to get you from A to B. Now, there's been some clients in the past that, hey, Wes, I've done this my whole life. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. But it doesn't hurt to get a second opinion.
Yes,
right?
for sure.
Let us, as financial professionals, let's review that plan. And maybe there are some some suggestions we can give you to better align to your goals,
Right.
specifically the legacy.
Yeah. Well, because you are fiduciaries, if you are giving a second opinion and everything looks to be in good shape, you're going to encourage someone to keep doing what you're doing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Exactly. We're happy when we give the thumbs up.
Right.
And what's great about it is that we have a network of CFPs, CFAs, along with Wes.
So certified financial planners, chartered financial analysts, right?
That's
Those
right.
are mouthfuls to
Yeah,
say, but yep.
Thanks for explaining
Yes,
that. Thank you. But we can give a holistic view of not only your current plan and your current distribution plan, but what are you going to leave behind? What are the wealth transfers, and what is that going to look like for you and for your family members as that wealth is inherited? And that comes down to just being purposeful, as Wes stated, is that if you're in this life journey, wouldn't it be great to know what the end could look like? And guess what? You're in charge, Kristen. You at home, you're in charge of your wealth. You're in charge of those assets. You're able to set the financial destiny that you envision for you and your family by reverse engineering where it is you want to be to where you are today. So getting you from that distribution phase into that legacy phase in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Those are the goals that we have within our firm.
Yeah, and there's so much peace of mind that comes with just getting it done, getting it buttoned up. I think a lot of people I know can stress, oh gosh, yeah, I need to do a will. Oh yeah, I need to do a trust or an estate plan. Oh, I'll get to that someday. And it's just so tragic when that's not taken care of, and then you're left with a mess.
Yeah, one of my clients in the past, they just kept kicking that can down the road, and it just so happened they passed, and guess what? It went to probate.
Wow.
And they didn't get the assets for a few years after that.
Right, because probate is expensive, it gets drawn out, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And then the assets were allocated a certain way, so they thought they had this amount, and then in a couple years, it was down here. So again, it may be a tough conversation, but you have to have that conversation.
Right, absolutely. Because if, like we said, if you don't have a plan in place, it's called dying intestate. If you don't have a
Intestate.
will, then the state has a plan for you, and it's not always favorable. So,
That's not good.
That's right.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate hearing your input and your stories as always, and appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Kristen.
Wesley,
Appreciate
Kenny,
it.
thank you so much. And to our viewers, we appreciate you watching. We hope you found this to be educational and valuable. That's how it's intended each and every week. Again, to receive your complimentary tax map, all you need to do is call that number, 844-575-8071, or scan that QR code to get connected as well. Until next time, be safe, be happy, be blessed. We love you, Hampton Roads. We'll see you next time.